Hey guys, tonight we travel back to a world where surviving the week meant avoiding fleas, fevers, and folks who thought onions could cure anything. You're walking the mud-caked streets of 14th century Europe, a place where hygiene is a punchline and death has a VIP pass to every village. The air smells like wood smoke, spoiled fish, and something worse. Waste flows through shallow ditches. People hawk loaves of bread, dried herbs, and occasionally their own teeth. You step around a puddle that might be rainwater or something far less charming. You're here in the early 1342nd. The weather's pleasant, but rumours are swirling like chimney smoke. Something's happening out east. People whisper about a great dying spreading west. Most don't believe it, or at least pretend not to. Superstition holds more weight than science. People still think sneezing too much could summon demons. And you, lucky traveller, are just trying to sell cloth. Or maybe spices. Or maybe you're on a pilgrimage. Either way, you're about to become history's unwitting test subject. You might be smart, you might be clean, doesn't matter. If you're in the wrong town on the wrong day, you're done. Statistically, you probably won't survive this. But let's pretend you do. Let's walk you through every filthy, terrifying, and occasionally hilarious detail of the Black Death and give you a real fighting chance. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And let me know in the comments, where in the world are you watching from, and what time is it there? Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You're walking into a town square. A rooster crows, but it's more a scream than a crow. You pass a man selling eel pies. He gives you a nod. He's missing 3 teeth and 1 eyebrow. You nod back politely and keep moving. Children run barefoot over stones and mud, laughing in the way only children in danger seem to. A dog with 3 legs limps across the road, chewing something that's probably best not identified. There's no plague here yet. Not officially. But that doesn't mean people aren't dying. They are constantly. From hunger, childbirth, random infections, or being stabbed over a slightly bruised apple. In medieval towns, death is more common than bread. And the smell. Oh, the smell. Historians still argue whether medieval people were truly nose-blind to the stench, or simply too accustomed to complain. But to you, fresh from a century where deodorant exists, it's a slap in the face. Human waste, rotting meat, unwashed bodies, it's a nasal buffet of nightmares. People wash rarely. Water isn't trusted. A hot bath? That's for royalty. Most folks clean themselves maybe twice a year. And even then, it's just a rinse. You pass a woman throwing a chamber pot's contents into the street with a shout. "Gardez l'eau," she yells. "Watch out for the water." You step aside just in time. Nice reflexes. That might save your life later. You rent a room at a tavern. It's a straw mattress, crawling with life. You set your things down and try not to think about lice, or rats, or the way the innkeeper just coughed into your stew. News from the east travels slow, but you overhear whispers. A sickness, someone says, kills in a day. Another claims a ship arrived in Genoa last week, the crew foaming at the mouth. Quirky fact. Some folks think the disease comes from looking at the wrong planet alignment. Mercury and Saturn were apparently giving people bad vibes in 1345. That's why everyone's so jumpy. You shrug it off. Bad harvests? Sure. Weird weather? Okay. But a world-ending plague? Nah. That's just traveller's gossip. Besides, you're too busy bartering for turnips and trying to avoid being pickpocketed by a guy with a suspiciously fancy hat. As night falls, you lie in bed, listening to the sounds of the town. Dogs barking, someone vomiting outside. The bell at the monastery tolls once for the hour and twice for another death. You count the chimes. 5 deaths today. Not unusual, yet. But something shifts. Tomorrow, the town physician will see his first case. A baker's son. His neck swelling, fevered, ranting, covered in black splotches. The Black Death is here, and you're about to find out just how bad can get. Sleep tight. Don't let the bed fleas bite. Especially because they're probably carrying something far worse. You wake early to the sound of shouting something about a sick boy. The baker's son, you realize, from last night's gossip. A small crowd gathers in the square outside your tavern, people craning their necks to see. You tug on your shoes, wooden clogs by the way, which squeak hilariously, and head out to investigate. The boy lies on a cart, twitching. His skin glistens with sweat, face pale as chalk, and there's a large, angry lump swelling under his jaw. His mother weeps, and the town physician stands nearby, fanning himself with a dirty rag. He looks concerned, but not panicked. You're not sure whether that's comforting or terrifying. The townspeople whisper the word pestilence, but no one says it too loudly. In 1348, naming a thing gives it power. Denial is a survival strategy. And besides, people get sick all the time. What's one more fever? You retreat to the edge of the crowd, trying not to breathe too deeply. That instinct might just save you. Historians still argue whether the plague spread primarily through flea bites or airborne droplets, but either way, proximity isn't your friend. Later, you stroll through the marketplace, trying to pretend things are normal. You eye the cheese, notice the flies on it, and keep walking. A fishmonger offers you a slab of something that might once have been eel. You pass. The street smells worse today. Somehow, inexplicably worse. It's as though fear itself has a scent: mildew, unwashed skin, and dread. You overhear an old woman muttering about a great punishment from God. She says it's because of vanity, or bad harvests, or women showing their ankles. She's holding a chicken and stroking it like a cat. You quietly back away. Let's talk about sanitation, because this part's important for your survival odds. Picture a town with no plumbing, no sewage system, and no organized trash collection. Waste goes in the gutter. Dead animals rot in alleyways. People relieve themselves in corners. You can't walk 10 feet without stepping in something you regret. Bathhouses do exist, but they're often shared by prostitutes and the sick, so people fear them. Cleanliness, in this time, is more suspicious than saintly. Doctors even warn that bathing too much opens the pores to bad air. Fun fact, they call that bad air miasma, and they're pretty convinced it's the root cause of everything from toothaches to town-wide death. That's where you are living in filth, next to others living in filth, hoping the air doesn't kill you. Now, let's talk about rats. Because they're everywhere. Big ones. Bold ones. The kind that will steal your bread in daylight and then chew your blanket at night. You've already heard one skitter across the beams above your head while trying to sleep. Medieval homes aren't exactly rat-proof. They're made of wood, thatch, and wishful thinking. Here's the kicker. It's not the rats themselves, it's their fleas. These tiny, hopping nightmares carry Yersinia pestis, the bacterium responsible for the Black Death. One bite, and you've got a one-way ticket to a dirt nap. You notice your ankles itch. You scratch. Then stop. Then panic. Is that a bite? Just a scratch? Maybe it's nothing. You chew your lower lip and resolve to wear tighter socks tomorrow. By midweek, the baker's son is dead, buried quickly. The priest mutters a rushed prayer. There's no coffin, just a shroud. He goes into a trench with 2 others, an old man and a young girl. No one cries anymore. Not really. Crying wastes breath. You start keeping a tally in your head. 6 dead on Tuesday, 9 by Thursday, 15 by Saturday. The bell doesn't toll for each anymore, it would ring all day. You think about leaving, but you're not sure where to go. Every town's the same, they say. Worse, maybe. And if you're caught trying to flee, guards will turn you away, or, if they're feeling generous, just throw rocks until you get the message. So, you do what everyone else does. You stay inside, eat less, and try not to cough. Here's something weird. Cats are vanishing. At first you think they're just hiding, but someone whispers that they're being killed, burned, drowned, or stoned. Why? Because some believe cats are agents of the devil. You sigh. There goes your only hope of pest control. A travelling priest arrives, warning that the plague is divine punishment. He urges everyone to confess their sins, whip themselves in the square, and donate what little money they have to the church. You watch from your window as people line up to be flogged. The priest chants. The children cry. The flies, ever present, hover like mourners. Your food's running low. Bread is mouldy. Cheese smells like rot. You boil water and pretend it's soup. You find a shriveled apple in your bag and treat it like a feast. Your neighbor dies overnight. You heard her moaning through the wall the evening before. Now it's quiet. Too quiet. The landlord removes the body by morning and replaces the straw mattress by noon. That room's rented again by dinner time. You start to understand something. People here expect to die. It's not fear, it's resignation. Like people caught in a flood, holding candles above their heads, knowing the water's still rising. And yet, you're still here. Not coughing, no lumps, still sleeping barely but breathing. Maybe you've got a strong immune system. Or maybe the fleas haven't found you yet. Either way, you're not dead. Not tonight. Morning arrives with the low moan of church bells and the distant sound of someone retching into a ditch. You don't even flinch anymore. That's just background noise now, like roosters crowing or carts rolling over cobblestones. Except in this case, the rooster is dying, and the cart probably contains bodies. Today, you decide to venture a little farther from the tavern. You wrap a cloth over your nose and mouth, a move that earns you a few chuckles from townsfolk, but hey, who's laughing now? Not the coughing guy near the fishmonger, that's for sure. You're walking toward the docks because here's the thing. You've heard rumors. That it all started here. Ships, sailors, rats. Maybe if you can understand how people are catching the plague, you can better avoid it. And indeed, when you reach the dockside, the air thickens with something that smells like salt, old wood, and dried fish sweat. There are 3 ships moored in the bay. One of them has its sails half raised, as if trying to escape without permission. You spot a man yelling at dock workers not to unload anything. Another worker throws a crate overboard. It's chaos, but quiet chaos. People here aren't screaming. They're watching, like a crowd waiting for a building to fall. Historians still argue whether the Black Plague arrived in Europe via Genoese trading ships from the Black Sea or by overland routes through Asia. But this town's pretty convinced the plague arrived in the belly of a merchant ship. Crates of cloth, bundles of spices, and tucked inside fleas, rats, and disease. A few sailors are sitting under the shade of a tarp. They look bad. Like, I'm already halfway into the next world bad. Sunken eyes, bruised skin. One of them has a giant swelling under his armpit. You gulp. You've seen that before? That's a bubo. You take 3 steps back. Quietly, slowly. Let's pause here. Time for your first big decision. Do you A. Run. Leave town right now. B. Stay hidden, isolate, and pray your immune system is top tier. C. Try some good old medieval medicine. Spoiler. All 3 are kind of terrible. Option A. You're unlikely to make it far. Towns don't welcome travelers anymore. You'll be turned away at gates, pelted with stones, or worse. One city reportedly bricked people into their homes. Like, oh, you've got symptoms? Here's a nice wall to die behind. Charming. Option B sounds smart, until you realize you share your tavern with 6 other people, 2 of whom have started coughing, and 1 of whom insists that garlic keeps the plague away. She eats 6 cloves a day. The smell is becoming a health hazard. Option C? Oh boy. That means bloodletting, boiled onions, and get this, placing a live chicken against your swelling. It's supposed to draw out the sickness. Somehow, the chicken never recovers. But neither do the people. You pick option B, sort of by default. You stay in, you ration your food, you stop touching anything unless it's absolutely necessary. You try to make a plague mask out of linen and lavender. It looks sad, but it smells nice. A small win, a curious detail. People start avoiding rich colors. Red, purple, these draw attention, and attention is bad. You start dressing like you're already dead. Muted browns, faded black. You want to blend in with the dust. The town healer visits your neighbor. He's a well-fed man with rings on every finger and a huge leather satchel. Inside, herbs, dried frogs, and a knife that hasn't been cleaned in well, ever. He hums while he works, which is somehow more upsetting than silence. He lets some blood from the man's arm, mutters a prayer, and then smears onion paste over the poor guy's chest. The smell is biblical. That night, the man dies. You hear the healer grumble about needing stronger leeches next time. Mainstream medical practices at this time rely heavily on the theory of humours. That's right, 4 bodily fluids: blood, phlegm, yellow bile, and black bile. You're supposed to have them in balance. If you don't, the solution is usually something involving sharp objects and screaming. You've started sleeping in shifts. You can't bear the idea of closing your eyes and waking up with a bubo, or not waking up at all. You make tea from dried mint and try to pretend it's medicine. You even chant a few prayers you barely remember from childhood. Because here's a not-so-fun fact. Most people die within 2-3 days of showing symptoms. It's fast, brutal, and completely indifferent to status or wealth. The bishop dies. The smithy's daughter dies. The man who sells religious relics, which are definitely fake, dies with a finger bone in his pocket. Your hands are raw from washing with vinegar. Your lips are cracked, but you're still standing. The docks, now officially closed, stink of rotting cargo. No one wants to unload anything. The goods rot where they sit. You watch from a distance as men in hooded robes toss sacks of grain into the river. Better drowned than diseased. You begin to notice a pattern. People who live near the docks are dying faster. More rats, more fleas, more exposure. You make a note. Avoid the docks. But then, the landlord's wife falls ill. That changes everything. She's been in and out of everyone's rooms, changing linens, delivering meals, gossiping in hushed tones. Now, she's curled up in a corner, moaning. Her neck bulges grotesquely. Her lips are blue. The tavern empties by nightfall. You sleep in the stables that night. It smells like manure, but it's far from people, far from coughs, far from most things, including your dignity. A cat curls up beside you. You don't ask where it came from. You just whisper thanks. Maybe it'll eat a flea or two. You close your eyes. Still no bubo. Not yet. You wake to hooves. Not thundering, heroic gallop-style hooves, just a slow, clumsy plod. You peek over a hay bale and spot a horse-drawn cart passing through the street. The driver wears a hood, face covered with a rag, eyes darting. In the back of the cart are bodies, stacked, wrapped in cloth. Some not even that. The cart creaks, leaving a trail of flies behind it. The driver doesn't speak. He doesn't need to. This is the new normal. You brush straw off your clothes and head back toward the tavern. Not because it's safe, but because you left your coin pouch under the floorboard. And if the landlord's wife is gone, the place might already be looted. As you walk, you notice the town has changed. Not just fewer people, but fewer sounds. Fewer smells, too, oddly enough. All the strong scents baking bread, brewing beer, roasting meat are fading. What remains is the staleness of fear and ash. A funeral procession pass by. No one cries. A priest leads it, holding a wooden cross in one hand, swinging a censer in the other. The incense does little to mask the rot. Behind him, 4 people carry a 5th on a litter. She looks peaceful. But then, everyone looks peaceful when they're wrapped in linen and not screaming anymore. Inside the tavern, you recover your pouch. No sign of the landlord, just silence. You take a bottle of wine, more out of survival than theft, and leave a few coins on the table. Old habits die hard, especially when you don't want to. Here's the thing. You don't know if you're immune, lucky, or living on borrowed time. But you do know you need a plan. And that plan starts with understanding exactly what the plague is. Spoiler, no one in your century actually knows. In theory, the cause is bad air. That's what everyone says. The word plague itself comes from Latin plaga, meaning stroke or wound. But medieval folks don't really care about etymology. They just want to not die. Medical texts from the era, if you can read them, describe the plague as a punishment from God. Others say it's caused by hot and moist winds from the south. One particularly odd theory claims that looking at certain stars can infect you. So if you survive the plague, you might still go blind from eye rolling. Your neighbour, an older man named Gerard, tries to cure himself with crushed emeralds dissolved in wine. You watch him down a cup and then vomit for 10 minutes. He calls it cleansing the humours. You call it, well, something else. Meanwhile, you hear of people retreating to the countryside, hiding in forests, caves, and abandoned farmhouses. You consider it. But food? Water? Bandits? Nature? You're not exactly an outdoorsman. You once tripped on a cabbage. Still, you've got options. Sort of. One friend tells you about a woman in the next town over who survived after drinking vinegar every day and sleeping with garlic tied around her neck. Another claims her brother swam in holy water and hasn't coughed once since. Yet another just drinks. A lot. Which frankly sounds more relaxing than accurate. Historians still debate how much of these folk cures were genuinely believed, and how much were just people clinging to something, anything that felt like control. Honestly, it's probably both. You're not above superstition at this point either. You hang rosemary near your bed. You mutter a few borrowed Latin phrases before sleeping. You haven't had communion in 5 years, but you cross yourself every morning now. There's a plague doctor in town now. He showed up yesterday. You saw him from the alley, long coat, gloves, and that infamous beaked mask. Looks like a bird crossed with a nightmare. But the design isn't just for drama. That long beak is stuffed with herbs, spices, and sometimes vinegar, soaked rags. People think it filters the air, that it keeps the miasma out. He also carries a cane, not just to check pulses, spoiler, no one has one, but to poke and prod without getting too close. Here's a fun tidbit. Most plague doctors weren't real doctors. They were often second-rate barbers, surgeons, or unlucky volunteers. Some were just appointed by city officials, desperate to look like they were doing something. You don't trust him, but you nod respectfully when he passes. You want no trouble with the Birdman. You're beginning to notice something else too. The townspeople who isolate, who shut their doors, who avoid others, they seem to be faring better. Not perfectly, but better. The ones who gather, gossip, or try to do business as usual, they're the ones going silent overnight. So, you retreat. Fully. You find an old shed behind the tavern, empty now, but still sturdy. You fix the latch, stuff the cracks with cloth, and turn it into your new home. You bring food, wine, a wool blanket, and a small carving of Saint Sebastian. He was pierced with arrows, and somehow this makes him the go-to plague saint. You don't fully get the logic, but hey, it can't hurt. Each night, you count your breath. Listen to your heartbeat. Check your lymph nodes obsessively. Each morning you sigh in disbelief. Still alive. You've never been so bored. Or so grateful. One afternoon you step out for air and see a bird overhead. A stork maybe. Or a heron. Long-legged, graceful, free. You watch it fly, then return quickly to your hut. No need to push your luck. Later, you hear someone singing. It's a child. A soft voice, off-key, but cheerful. The tune is strange, unfamiliar. You creep to the edge of the shed and peek out. A girl no older than 8 twirls alone in the square, humming to herself. She holds a flower. You wonder where her parents are. She doesn't cough. She doesn't cry. She just twirls, once, twice, and vanishes around a corner. You hope she's real. You hope she stays that way. You lose track of the days. The church bell rings less often now, not because fewer people are dying, but because the bell ringer died 2 days ago and no one stepped up to take his place. The silence has weight now, like thick wool laid over the town. Each morning, you poke your head out of your makeshift shelter, half expecting the sky to be red or cracked open or raining frogs. But no, it's the same greyish sky, same buzz of flies, same limp breeze that carries the smell of decay and overripe apples. You're surviving, not thriving. You've eaten nothing but hard bread, dried peas, and occasional raw garlic for a week. Your stomach hurts, but your skin's not covered in boils, and you're still breathing, so... Win? Today you venture a little farther out just to stretch your legs, you tell yourself. Really, you're restless. You've read the same 3 pages of a borrowed Bible a dozen times, traced the grain of the wooden wall until your fingers splintered, and spoken aloud to your Saint Sebastian figurine so often that if he ever does respond, you'll probably scream. But before you leave, you wrap a scarf soaked in vinegar around your face. You wear gloves. You carry a stick not for defense, but to poke at things. You're not taking chances. You pass through the square and notice something strange. People are lining up outside a small house with smoke coming from the chimney. Not for food, there is none. Not for prayers, there's a church for that. No, this line is for something even more precious. Treatment. Inside that house lives a healer. Not a priest, not a barber, a woman. Rumor has it she saved 3 people, maybe 4, using strange methods. Herbs, poultices, isolation. One man swears she made him drink boiled willow bark, and his fever broke in 2 days. You decide not to risk the line. Crowds are bad. But you do mark the house in your memory. Here's a quirky little historical note. While most medieval doctors were men, some of the most effective care actually came from women, wives, midwives, widows who used practical remedies passed down through generations. Of course, if they were too successful, they risked being accused of witchcraft, because heaven forbid a woman know how to heal a wound without screaming about demons. Historians still argue whether some of these so-called wise women understood germ theory on a subconscious level just enough to clean wounds and boil linens, or if they were simply good at keeping things tidy. Either way, they outperformed most university-trained doctors who were busy bleeding patients into unconsciousness. You pass another home. Door marked with a red X. That means plague. It's the only decoration some homes get now. There's no one outside. No sound. You move faster. On the corner, you spot something even more bizarre than the silence. A man juggling. Yes, juggling. 3 apples bruised, but still. He tosses them into the air, catching and spinning, smiling wildly at no one. You blink. He sees you, stops, and bows deeply. Then he mutters something about making the spirits laugh, and vanishes into an alley. You stand there, mouth open. That's new. There's a theory, and it's more psychological than historical, that in times of overwhelming death, some people snap. Not screaming or violence, just break. They dance, sing, talk to birds, juggle. Because what else can you do when the world's falling apart? By late afternoon, you return to your shelter. You pass a wall with flyers pasted up in rough handwriting. Flagellants coming tomorrow, it reads. Repent and be spared. Oh boy. You've heard of them. Groups of men, stripped to the waist, walking barefoot through towns, and whipping themselves in public. They chant hymns, beat drums, and insist that God's wrath can be lifted, if only enough blood is spilled, preferably their own. You briefly consider joining them. After all, they seem committed, and oddly organized. But then you remember what happened in the last town. They were banned, then hunted, then blamed, when the disease got worse. It always gets worse. The evening light filters through the slats in your shed. Dust dances in the beams. You sit on your blanket, sipping weak wine and chewing dried beans like a sad squirrel. You think about the juggler, the girl with the flower, the healer woman, and for the first time in days, you laugh. Not because anything's funny, but because laughter still works. Still feels like something you own. You drift into sleep. You dream of baths. Not modern ones, mind you, just hot water, a tub, soap. Your skin feels clean, your lungs light, a fantasy now. You wake to a sound low chanting. The flagellants have arrived. You peek out. There they are. 20 men in blood, stained robes, their backs raw and bleeding. They walk slowly, each swing of the whip followed by a cry to the heavens. Children peek from windows. Mothers weep. Some cheer, others shut their doors. One man collapses. No one helps him. They step over his body and continue. You lie back down, stare at the roof. Trace the knots in the wood. Listen to your own breath and count your heartbeats. Still no fever. Still no swelling. Still here. You press a hand to your chest. It's warm, alive. You whisper to the rafters, one more day, just one more. You wake up with a jolt, not from illness, not from nightmares, but from the deep echoing clang of metal on wood. It takes you a second to realize what it is. Someone is nailing a notice to the public board in the square. You hear the rhythmic pounding and the rasp of a voice calling out something official, sounding. You pull your blanket tighter, wait for the sound to fade, then creep outside. Morning mist hangs low like a ghost that hasn't yet committed to haunting. The square is mostly empty, just a few figures wrapped in cloaks moving slowly, carefully, like they're afraid the ground might bite. You edge closer to the notice. It reads, "By order of the council, all suspected plague houses shall be sealed for the safety of the town. Quarantine is mandatory. Assistance or escape will be punished by law." You stare at the words. Then you notice the second part. Plague watch begins tonight. Marked homes will be boarded shut. Your stomach drops. This isn't about medicine anymore. It's about control. Quarantine as a concept is new here. The Venetians were the first to enforce it formally 40 days of isolation. Quaranta giorni, hence the word. They did it for sailors arriving from far-off ports, suspected of carrying bad air or worse. It actually helped. Somewhat. Historians still debate whether it was the time, the isolation, or just blind luck. Either way, it stuck. You've heard stories from travellers. Entire ships left to rot in the harbour, crews shouting for food until their voices went silent. People begging through closed doors, slipping notes under cracks. One man tied a loaf of bread to a string and lowered it to his wife from the attic. She didn't last long. You glance around. 2 doors on your street already have red X's. One of them belongs to Gerard, the crushed emeralds in wine guy. You remember his cough. You remember the smell coming from his window. You walk faster. There's a man standing near the well, tall, thin, eyes wide with something halfway between panic and pride. He's got a bucket in one hand, a sword on his hip, and a city badge on his chest. He's one of the quarantine guards now, volunteers, or volunteers-ish, likely chosen because they're still breathing and own a weapon. He sees you and raises a hand, but not in greeting, more like a warning. You nod and veer off toward the alley instead. Water can wait. Back in your shed, you start prepping. You move your blanket farther from the door. You stow your food under the floorboards. You wedge a stick through the latch from inside. You even scatter dried sage on the ground, because a woman once told you it keeps evil away. Honestly, who's to say she was wrong? You hear footsteps outside. Someone hammers planks across the windows of the house next door. Screaming follows. Not rage. Not even fear. Just despair. Later that day, someone starts singing. Loudly, badly, from behind one of the sealed doors. It's a love song. Off-key and completely out of place. You sit there, knees pulled to your chest, listening to this tragic, croaking ballad about a woman with hair like fire and breath like roses. It goes on for minutes, then silence. You wonder if he ran out of lyrics. You wonder if he ran out of air. You haven't seen the flagellants today. Maybe they moved on. Maybe they didn't survive the trip. They weren't exactly bleeding in moderation. You think about the healer woman again, the one with the smoky chimney and the line of hopefuls. What would she say about this mess? Would she board people in? Would she help them? Or would she just vanish when the guards came knocking? You sit there, chewing stale bread and wondering how many people are hiding, like you. How many others are listening through cracks in the wood? How many are counting heartbeats in the dark? There's a soft knock at your door. You freeze. Another knock. Lighter. Then a voice. You there? It's a child. You open the door, just a hair. It's the girl from before, Flower Girl. This time, she's not twirling. She's holding a small basket inside, 2 apples, a lump of cheese, and a small cloth doll. She offers it to you without a word. You stare. She shrugs and says, "You looked lonely." You take the basket slowly, unsure whether to thank her or cry, or run screaming from what might be a hallucination caused by mouldy cheese. "Where are your parents?" you ask. She shrugs again. "Asleep." You decide not to ask follow-ups. You say thank you. You say she should go home. You say to stay safe. She nods, then walks away. You close the door, set the basket down, and feel something strange press against your chest. Warmth. The doll is handmade, a little crooked, one arm longer than the other. It smells like lavender. You place it next to Saint Sebastian and whisper thanks again, to her, to fate, to whoever or whatever is keeping you alive. That night, you hear wolves. Not literal ones though, who knows? It's the 1,000, 302nd, and wolves are definitely a thing. No, these are human wolves. Looters. You hear a window smash, a scream. Someone shouts, "There's nothing left." Footsteps scatter. Desperate people become dangerous people. And right now, everyone is desperate. You hold your breath and grip the stick you sleep with. No one comes for your shed. Maybe they think it's empty. Maybe they think it's cursed. Maybe it is. But you? You're still here. And somehow, you're still you. The next morning, you wake to rain. A soft drizzle. Barely more than mist, but it smells clean, and that's so rare it feels sacred. You step outside, tilting your face to the sky, letting the drops bead on your cheeks. For once, the world doesn't smell like death, just wet earth and ash. The town feels quieter than ever, not just empty hollow, like it forgot how to echo. Even the flies seem fewer, like they've had their fill. A dog pads past, ribs visible under its skin, nose down, tail low. It doesn't look at you. You don't blame it. Today, you decide to visit the church not out of devotion exactly, but curiosity, and maybe a little desperation. The structure looms at the center of town like a warning. Big doors, iron hinges, and stained glass dulled by centuries of smoke and grime. Inside, it's cooler. Dust motes swirl through slanted light. Candles flicker half-heartedly in rusted holders. The pews are mostly empty. A few souls kneel, whispering prayers, heads bowed low not just in reverence, but exhaustion. The priest stands at the front, eyes hollow, robes stained. He looks like he hasn't slept in days, maybe weeks. His voice wavers as he speaks. Latin none of the townsfolk understand, but no one asks for a translation. The words are like bandages. Symbolic, slightly comforting, mostly ineffective. You sit in the back, not because you're unsure of your faith, but because you want the door close by. On the altar, there's a statue of the Virgin Mary covered in soot and wax drippings. Someone's laid rosemary across her feet. Another has left a turnip. Offerings now range from sacred to edible. As you sit, you remember a story. During the worst months of the plague, some towns organized public mass burials at night to avoid panic. Priests worked around the clock, administering last rites in batches. Eventually they stopped. Not out of cruelty, just sheer collapse. Historians still debate whether church attendance helped or harmed plague spread. Some say the candles and enclosed space acted like a petri dish. Others argue the sense of community prolonged survival, or at least sanity. You stay for 15 minutes, then leave when someone coughs behind you. Outside, the rain has stopped. You see something odd across the square. A man in fancy robes, surrounded by a small crowd. His sleeves are embroidered with gold thread, which seems offensive given the current climate. You edge closer. He's reading from a scroll, and so by decree of the regional steward, all assets of the deceased are to be surrendered for reallocation. Let this be an act of mercy and balance. Reallocation? Oh, right. Looting, but make it legal. You watch as officials move door to door, collecting anything of value from sealed homes. Books, coins, tools, jewelry, even blankets. No one stops them. Who would? One woman screams when they take a crucifix off her dead husband's body. They ignore her. You step back into the shadows. You're beginning to understand something dangerous. Power isn't gone. It just changed hands. The rich have left. The poor have died. And those in between, the ones with ink-stained fingers and official seals, are carving up what's left. Back at your shelter, you find a note wedged in the doorframe. Just a scrap of parchment with 3 words. They burn tomorrow. You stare at it, then look up. Across the road, someone's watching you. A boy, maybe 15, cloaked and barefoot, eyes darting. You blink and he's gone. You read the note again. They burn what tomorrow? You walk the town, quietly, carefully, watching, listening, and slowly, it becomes clear. They're planning to burn the plague houses, the sealed ones, not to purify or cleanse, but to erase, clear out the dead, disinfect the homes, make the town livable again. One official called it a renewal effort. You call it a funeral with extra steps. Some argue fire is the only way to kill the sickness. Others say it's theatre drama to make survivors feel in control. Historians still debate whether burning infected homes was helpful or just another tragic overreaction. You pass Gerard's house again. It's on the list. So is the house where the healer lives. You stop dead. You ask around quietly, carefully. The healer's not sick. She's healthy, still helping. But her home was marked because a patient died on her floor last week. That's all it takes. One death. One red X. Now the whole place is kindling. You want to help. You don't know how. You spend the evening writing a note, crude, short, barely legible. They're coming. Tonight. Leave now. You fold it, sneak out, and slide it under her door. Then you run back to your shed, heart pounding, legs shaking. That night, you don't sleep. You watch. From the shadows, you see officials in masks and gloves pouring oil over doorframes. A torchbearer follows. The first home ignites with a roar. Flames climb fast, illuminating faces stunned, hollow, resigned. Then another house. And another. When they reach the healers, they pause. The door is ajar. Empty. You allow yourself a slow, careful breath. The next morning, ashes blanket the street like grey snow. Everything smells like burned garlic and wet wood. You walk through it quietly, eyes lowered, stepping over charred planks and blackened metal. The healer is gone. But you're still here. And now, you've saved someone. Maybe that matters. Maybe it doesn't. But it's the first thing in weeks that feels right. The wind shifts. Not metaphorically, though. Yes, the mood has changed. No, today it literally shifts. The breeze blows from the east now, dry and oddly warm. You notice it when you open the shed door. It carries dust and the faint scent of iron. Not death exactly, but close. Like the smell before a storm, or after someone's pulled a sword from its sheath. You're not the only one who notices. Birds flutter restlessly. The dog you sometimes see in the alley growls at nothing, then disappears. A shop sign creaks in protest as the wind picks up. Something's coming, but no one knows what. You walk cautiously into town. The square looks different. Charcoal outlines of the burned homes remain, their silhouettes jagged and skeletal. People pick through rubble with sticks, hoping for coins, metal, anything useful. A child tries to pry a pot from a blackened hearth. His hands are wrapped in rags. He doesn't speak. In the center of the square stands a new figure. Hooded. Still. Unmoving. It's a monk, or at least someone dressed like one. No face visible, just shadow under a heavy cowl. He holds a wooden cross, not raised but grounded, like a staff. His presence is magnetic, quiet. The crowd gathers around him in silence. He raises his head just enough for his voice to carry. It's smooth and calm. Too calm. The end is near, he says. But so is the test. Test? He continues, those who are pure will pass through fire untouched. Those who carry the sin will fall. Oh, great. Another doomsday prophet. You've heard of them. The Black Death didn't just kill people. It inspired visions, warnings, delusions. People claim to see angels, demons, messages written in the stars. One man in France walked naked through 12 towns, claiming to be the voice of divine rebirth. He was stoned by Town 6. Historians still argue how much of this was religion and how much was mass trauma wrapped in theology. Either way, it's unsettling. The monk begins to chant. Others join in, softly at first, then louder. You step back. There's something off about it. The rhythm doesn't feel sacred. It feels rehearsed, like a theatre troupe trying to conjure holiness from muscle memory. No one cries. No one kneels. They just chant. You leave. Back in your shed, you find something unexpected. Tucked into the crack of the door, a pouch. Inside, a wedge of cheese, a tiny roll of bread, and a folded scrap of linen with dried lavender sewn into the edge. No note, no signature, but you know who it's from. You smile, just a little. Then you cry, just a little more. That night, thunder rolls in the distance. You lie awake, counting heartbeats again. The wind shakes the slats of your shelter, and for a moment, you wonder if the whole thing might blow over and carry you away like some tragic paper kite. You think about the monk, the healer, the girl. You think about the plague, about how it moves, how it chooses. That's what people say, anyway, that the disease chooses. The sinners, the prideful, the unlucky. But the fleas don't care if you pray. They don't care if you're kind or cruel or can recite the Psalms backward. They just bite. And if you're bitten, you're bitten. You drift to sleep repeating that like a mantra. They just bite. They just bite. They just bite. Sometime before dawn you wake to screaming. You bolt upright, heart thundering. Outside, someone's shouting, "They're taking the dead to the river." You throw on your cloak and rush out. A procession of carts, snakes, through the street, filled with bodies, covered in canvas. The drivers are masked, silent. They move toward the far edge of town, where the river curves away like a silver ribbon. You follow from a distance. When you arrive, you see them dumping the bodies into the water. Your water, the same river that feeds the well, the same river people drink from. Wash in. Baptize babies in. You reel. Someone yells, "They said it's cleaner than burying them." Cleaner? A woman screams, "Are we supposed to drink their bones?" She throws a rock at the nearest cart. It misses. Barely. The guards draw weapons, but no one rushes them. Not today. People are too weak, too tired. They just watch. You back away, stunned, numb. You return to the square. The monk is gone. The wind is colder now. You sit on the edge of a broken fountain and stare at your reflection in the shallow water. Your face is thinner, older, your eyes haunted. You wonder if you're changing. Not infected, just shifted. Like a chair left too long in sunlight. Still there, but a different shade. You go home. You drink water, you boiled yourself. You eat the cheese. You tuck the lavender cloth into your sleeve like armor. Then you wait. You wait, and you listen, and you breathe. Still no swelling. Still no fever. Still, you. The next morning, you wake to a strange sound. Laughter. Not the nervous, unhinged kind you've heard from looters or grief-stricken widows. This is real. Warm, light, human. You blink against the rising sun and follow the sound to the square. There, a young man is juggling again this time, with actual apples that haven't yet rotted to mush. A small group watches, cautiously smiling. A child claps. Even the stern-faced guard from 3 days ago chuckles once before catching himself. You stay at the edge, leaning on a post, trying to understand what's happening. Something's shifted. Maybe it's the sun, it's been out for 2 full days now, warm and steady. Maybe it's the dwindling death toll, or just that most of the sick have already passed. Or maybe everyone's too numb to grieve anymore. But the town isn't healing. Exactly, it's adjusting. You see people sweeping ash from their thresholds, hanging new charms over doorways, boiling cloths in vats of wine or vinegar. They don't know if it works, but it gives their hands something to do. You even see the healer again. She's wearing a new cloak, dark blue, hood up, but it's her. You recognize the way she stands, alert but unafraid. Her house is gone, reduced to rubble, but she walks like someone who's survived worse. You lock eyes briefly. She gives you a nod. It's not gratitude. It's recognition. You're both still standing. That afternoon, a bell rings. Not the funeral bell. Not the church bell. This one's lower. Metallic. Rhythmic. The blacksmith has reopened. You walk past and see him hammering again. Sweat running down his face, muscles straining. He pauses only to wipe his brow and sip water boiled, he emphasizes. Loudly. To no one in particular. He's fixing horseshoes. Making nails. Working. It's the most hopeful thing you've seen in weeks. Historians note that following the worst waves of plague, entire towns restructured themselves not from policy or science, but sheer survival instinct. When the leaders die, when the systems fail, it's the blacksmith who decides when a town breathes again, or the baker, or the girl who still hums lullabies in the ruins. You buy a single nail, you don't need it, but he needs the coin. It's how hope circulates now, like currency, like gossip, like air. Later, you pass the chapel again. A boy stands outside selling holy water. You ask where it's from. He grins and says, "From the same river they dumped the bodies in." You both laugh. even though it's not funny. Not at all. That night, you light a candle. You haven't done that in weeks. The flame flickers, then steadies. You watch it for hours, comforted by the way it stands tall despite everything. Just before you sleep, someone knocks. Again, you freeze, then rise. It's her, the healer. She doesn't speak, just hands you a satchel. Inside, dried herbs, linen bandages, and a small bottle of something that smells like rosemary and vinegar had a child. Just in case, she says. You nod. She walks away. You stare at the bottle. Just in case. No miracles promised. No nonsense. Just preparation. You tuck it beside your blanket, next to the lavender doll and the saint carving. That night, you dream of strange things. You dream you're in a crowd, not panicked, not weeping, just gathered. Everyone is quiet, watching something rise in the sky. Not a comet, not a storm. Something golden, a shape without form, light that doesn't burn. Someone whispers, "It's the cure." Someone else laughs. You wake with a start, unsure what that meant. But the wind has changed again, cooler now. Fresher. You open the shed door. The air feels like after, like something heavy has passed through and left space behind. You walk to the well. The guard nods at you. You nod back. He no longer wears his badge. The monk is gone. The juggler's asleep under a tree. A woman sweeps dust from her doorstep, humming the same tune the little girl once did. And you? You're still here. Still breathing. Still unbitten. Still you. The world is quieter now. But it's not dead. It's different. And maybe, just maybe, that's enough. By now, you know the rhythm of things. Wake with the sun. Check your breath. Stretch your limbs. Sniff cautiously for rot or smoke or worse. And when all signs point to still alive, you start your day. Today is no different, except the silence feels less heavy. Less like a warning, and more like a rest. Like the town itself is exhaling after weeks of holding its breath. You walk to the market, not to buy anything. Coin still isn't exactly useful, but to look, to see. There are stalls again. Not many. Just two, really. One offers onions and herbs, the other, clay pots. You consider both, but settle for a brief conversation with the herb seller. He's old, eyes cloudy, hands missing 2 fingers, but his voice is steady. They say if you boil sage with nettles, it keeps the fever out, he says. You nod. He shrugs. Or maybe it just gives your hands something to do while you wait. There's something beautiful about the way he says it, not bitter, not wise, just honest. A few townsfolk gather near the square. They speak softly, trading rumors, like birds testing the air before flying again. You sit on a low stone wall, watching. One woman says her cousin survived because she kept a toad in a jar and whispered secrets to it. Another swears she never got sick because she burned a lock of her own hair every morning and buried the ashes under the hearth. Someone else claims he walked barefoot through holy ground and hasn't so much as sneezed. You don't laugh at any of it, because the truth is, no one knows why you're still alive, or why you're sitting here, fully intact, while hundreds are buried in a trench by the river. Historians still argue whether the survivors had genetic resistance, stronger immune systems, or sheer, ridiculous luck. One modern theory suggests that certain people had a rare mutation that made their blood less inviting to the bacterium. But back here, in your time, the only theory that matters is hope. And maybe garlic. You hear footsteps behind you, familiar ones. It's the girl. She stands next to you without a word, holding another flower this time, a daisy. You take it gently. You're still here, you say. She nods. Good. She doesn't speak, just sits beside you. 2 quiet figures on a stone wall in a town trying to remember how to be alive. Eventually, she stands and walks off. You watch her until she disappears behind a building. Later, you visit the burned-out shell of the healer's house. The stones are still warm from sun, but the air no longer smells of smoke. You step over charred beams and find something left behind, a small clay jar, unbroken. You wipe off the ash and open it. Lavender. Dried, clean, whole. You take it with you. You begin to feel like you're building a new kind of altar, a collection of the gentle, the small, the sacred. A doll, a carved saint, a satchel of herbs, a daisy. And now, a jar of lavender. You don't know what to do with any of it. But for the first time, you feel like maybe, just maybe, this is what surviving looks like. Not just breathing, remembering, carrying forward. You return to your shed and find a bird perched on the roof, a black one with one white feather. It stares at you like it's guarding the place. You nod. Thanks. It flies off. That night, you boil water with sage and rosemary. You pour it into a cup and sit in silence, sipping. It tastes like nothing, and everything. You let yourself imagine. What if the plague really is fading? What if tomorrow brings more than survival? What if it brings music? Color? Normal? No better than normal. Something that knows where it came from. You lie on your blanket, curl up beside your collection of little things, and whisper to the roof. I'm still here. You say it once, then again, then again. It becomes a lullaby, and in the quiet that follows, you sleep. No nightmares, no screams in the distance, just the soft sound of a town trying, slowly, to live again. The next morning brings with it a surprising sound. Hammering. Not the grim, boarding up the sick kind. No, this is brisk, energetic, rhythmic. You sit up and listen. Clink, clink, clink. Pause. Clink, clink, clink. You rise, stretch, and follow it to the town square. There, in the center of the broken fountain, two boys are rebuilding something. A cart, maybe? Or half a stall? It's hard to tell. They argue about angles and rope knots but never stop moving. Sweat runs down their faces. Wood dust clings to their sleeves. They look alive. A small crowd gathers not to help, not yet but to watch. And in times like these, watching is the first step toward joining. You find yourself smiling. Not widely, just a flicker. But it stays. People begin talking again. Not just whispering rumors or reciting prayers, but planning. One man wants to repair the chapel roof. A woman offers to tend gardens behind abandoned homes. The blacksmith, yes. Him again announces he's reforging tools for anyone who brings scrap. It's not a celebration. It's a reclamation. Even the town notice board has changed. Where once there were red warnings and death tolls, someone has tacked up a single line written in charcoal. If you're still here, help us begin again. You touch it lightly, half worried it'll crumble under your fingers. It doesn't. You check yourself for symptoms again. Still no fever, no swelling, no cough. You've done this every morning for so long now. It's like brushing your teeth in the 21st century. Mechanical, hopeful, a tiny ritual of control. That afternoon, you gather your things. Not to leave, no, not yet, but to move your shelter closer to the people. You carry your little altar of items, doll, herbs, carving, lavender, flower. You place them on a windowsill of a half-burned home that still has a roof. This is your new space. It smells like ash and rosemary. You sweep the floor with a pine branch. You hang cloth over the doorway. You find a cracked pot and plant something in it. You don't even know what the seed is, just that it was tucked in the satchel the healer gave you. You water it anyway. Here's a quirky thing about humans. We build things just to prove we can. In the ruins of cities, after fire, war, or flood, people always plant something. Even a weed. Something stubborn. Something green. Historians still marvel at how quickly the world bounced back after the Black Plague. Within decades, new towns rose, wages improved, and even art flourished. It was as if grief turned into momentum, as if people had stared down death and decided, okay, now let's live. You feel that now not in grand gestures, but in scraps. A woman braiding her daughter's hair. A man tuning a battered lute. Two teens stealing a kiss behind the bakery ruins. Life isn't normal. It's insistent. It keeps returning, like moss through cracks. And then just after dusk you hear it. Music. A pipe. Off-key. Slightly wheezy. But music. Someone plays a tune you almost recognize. Something folkish. Old. Meant for dancing. You close your eyes and let it fill your chest like warm soup. For a moment, you forget the grave trenches, the smoke, the ash on your boots. You think instead of bread baking again, of fingers touching in forgiveness, of voices raised not in fear, but harmony. You wander back toward the square. People are gathering, still distanced, still cautious, but drawn to the sound. And then, in the middle of it all, the little girl spins. Just once, then again. Her dress flutters, her flower crown tilts, and slowly, carefully, two more children join her. It becomes a kind of dance. No one claps, no one shouts, but everyone feels it. And for the first time in weeks, there's a kind of permission to smile, to believe, to look at tomorrow and not flinch. You head home. You light your candle again. You place the daisy in water, and you whisper, not to the saints, or the stars, or the ashes, but to yourself. I made it to the other side. Not the end of the plague, but the beginning of something else. The sky the next morning is streaked with gold, the kind of sunrise that poets describe but never quite capture. You blink against it, eyes dry from a sleep that actually felt like rest. No dreams of fever, no shadows at the door, just stillness, wrapped in warmth and quiet breathing. You take it slow today, not because you're tired, but because finally you don't have to rush. You brush your clothes clean, rinse your face with cool water, and even trim your nails with a borrowed knife. It feels ceremonial, like washing off an old self. Outside, you see more signs of life. A woman hangs laundry on a line strung between two cracked beams. The cloth flaps gently in the breeze, catching sunlight like sails. It's so mundane, so beautiful. You stop and stare. Down the street, someone's painting over a red X with whitewash, thick, deliberate strokes. You don't know if it's allowed, you don't care. It's happening. Across from the well, a table's been set up. On it, jars of dried herbs, bundles of garlic, small pots of paste labelled in smudged ink. The healer is there, calm, focused. She speaks softly to each visitor, listens, offers advice. No fanfare, just service. You join the queue. When it's your turn, she looks at you with faint amusement. You don't look sick, she says. Not yet, you reply. She hands you a pouch. Inside, dried yarrow, mint, and a small cloth sachet filled with something lemony. For your nerves, she says. You thank her. She doesn't smile, but her eyes soften. You walk home the long way. Past the chapel, past the scorched ruins, past a field where someone's tilling soil with a stick, and hope. You sit near your planted pot, still just dirt, but you know what's in it. That's enough. Later that afternoon, the town council, or what's left of it, gathers in the square. 3 men and 1 woman, standing awkwardly on a wooden crate. Their robes are stained, their shoes don't match, but they stand tall. We declare this town open again, one says, to trade, to work, to rebuilding. There's no cheering, just nods. Silent approval. Because what matters now isn't noise, it's movement. You hear someone say the word future out loud for the first time in weeks. That night, someone lights a fire in the center of the square, not for burning bodies, but for warmth, for light. People gather, cautiously. One man passes around a jug of something strong. It burns your throat. You don't care. The girl appears again. No flower this time, just bare feet and a thin smile. She sits beside you, doesn't speak, just offers a piece of bread, slightly stale. You take it, tear it, share it back. You watch the flames together, the way they twist and leap, as if trying to tell a story in a language no one speaks anymore. You feel something shift in your chest. Not grief, not joy, something in between, something like peace. Across the square, someone plays a drum, just a steady beat, like a pulse. One of the boys from earlier taps his foot in time. Another hums. It begins quietly, naturally, a kind of rhythm, a heartbeat for a town reborn. You wonder what you'll do tomorrow. Maybe help rebuild a roof. Maybe dig a well. Maybe find out what's growing in your mystery pot. You think about writing down what happened. Not just for yourself, but for the ones who'll come after. The children, the ones who'll ask, was it true? And how did you live? You want to have an answer. But for now, you sit beside the fire, alive, unbroken, and somehow whole. Today, you wake before the sun. Not because of nightmares those have eased, but out of habit. Your body still remembers the urgency of survival, still whispers, check your breath, your skin, your pulse. You do. Everything's fine. You step outside into the grey-blue hush of early morning. The town hasn't stirred yet. It lies still, like a sleeping animal. Chimneys are cold, and no carts creak across the cobbles. Even the birds seem to be holding their breath. You take a walk slow, quiet, reverent. You pass the chapel, where a single candle burns in the window. Someone has placed daisies on the doorstep. You don't know who. You don't ask. You reach the cemetery, not the official one, that filled weeks ago. No, this is the new one. The long trench near the edge of town, where the grass is only just beginning to creep back over the disturbed earth. You stand there, hat in hand. No words, just presence. Then you whisper a few names. Yerad, the landlord's wife, the baker's son, the girl's parents, you assume. Historians still debate how many died in towns like yours. Some say a third, others say half. Some villages lost everyone. There are stories, quiet ones, of entire settlements where no one remained to tell what happened. But this town didn't vanish. It changed. You think that's worth honouring. As the sun rises, you return home. You check your mystery plant. Still just leaves, but strong ones. Broad, resilient, like it's daring you to doubt it. Someone knocks. You no longer flinch at the sound. It's the healer. She looks tired but clean. There's a new scar on her hand, but her eyes are clear. I'm heading east tomorrow, she says. There's word of another town in need. Fewer sick, more scared. You nod. I'll leave supplies at the chapel, she adds. Show people how to use them. You could help. You pause. You hadn't thought about staying for others, only for yourself. But now the idea takes root, just like the plant. Yes, you say. I'll stay. She nods once, firmly, then hands you a small leather-bound book. Record what works, she says. Record what doesn't. Someone will need it. Then she leaves. Just like that. You sit for a long while, holding the book. The pages are blank. The possibilities aren't. You write the date, or something close to it. Then a heading. How we survived. You start with the obvious. Boil everything. Burn rosemary. Keep your distance. But soon your words become more personal, softer, stranger. Talk to people, even if your voice shakes. Plant something, even if it dies. Keep something small, like a doll or a flower, or a bit of music. Let it remind you what you are. Light a candle. Sleep. Hours pass. You write more. You stop only when your hand cramps. Outside, the town stirs again. A boy chases a chicken across the square. A woman sings while scrubbing a doorstep. The blacksmith laughs loudly at his own joke, which no one else hears. And you? You write. Because you're not just surviving anymore. You're remembering. And in remembering, you're helping the town stitch itself back together, one fragile page at a time. You spend the morning doing something almost absurdly mundane. Sweeping. Your borrowed home half-roofed, 3 walls, and a door that sticks, is filling with dust and ash again. But today, you clean like it matters. You hum while you work. Not a song you know, just something you made up on the spot. Something slow, steady, and alive. The floor gleams by the time you finish. Or, well, it dulls less. That's something. You hang your lavender sachet near the doorway, where the scent can drift in and mix with sunlight. You pause to breathe it in. Outside, you hear the unmistakable clatter of a cart. It's not the grim body wagon this time, it's a merchant. You step out and blink at the sight. A wide-eyed man with a crooked hat, peddling bolts of cloth, bottles of ink, even a few apples. From the next valley, he calls. Trade for salt, wine, tools, or stories. Stories? You perk up. He gestures at a chalkboard hanging off his cart. 1 Jude story equals 1 apple. You smirk. He's either brilliant or ridiculous. Possibly both. You walk over, eyeing the apples. They're small but firm. He nods toward the board. Well? He asks. You lean in and say, I once lived through a plague in a shed behind a tavern, armed only with vinegar and a child's doll. He stares. Then he laughs, a deep, belly-shaking laugh that makes nearby heads turn. "You win," he says, tossing you an apple. "Best one I've heard in weeks." You take a bite. It's sweet, crisp, real. You didn't realize how much you missed that. He stays in town for hours, collecting stories and handing out small treasures. A spool of thread for a tale of surviving wolves. A tin spoon for a description of a funeral where no one cried, only sang. People gather, they talk, they share. It becomes a thing. Later, as the sun dips low, you sit on the edge of the square and listen to an old man recount a dream. He had one where the moon opened like an eye and told him to plant onions upside down. He did. They grew sideways. He still eats them. Everyone laughs. Here's a fringe detail historians love. Some communities, desperate for hope, turned to dreams for answers. They wrote them down, passed them around, built rituals from them. Were they useful? Debatable. But were they healing? Arguably, yes. You watch as the merchant packs up. You nod to him, and he nods back, the way two survivors do when they know they've seen things that others won't ever understand. You return home, belly full and heart lighter. That night, you light your candle and open the little book the healer gave you. You add more. Barter what you can: knowledge, laughter, memories. People crave stories more than supplies. Never underestimate an apple. You stop writing and stare at the flame. You think about the future. Not just tomorrow, years from now. Will they remember this? Will they understand? You wonder if children will one day ask their grandparents, "What was the plague like?" And will the answer be grim or gentle? You hope someone says, "There was fear, yes, but also songs. Dancing, a girl with flowers, a man with a cart full of nonsense and magic." You fall asleep before you can finish the thought. And for the first time in a long while, your sleep is dreamless. Because you don't need dreams tonight. You're already living in the beginning of one. The next morning arrives wrapped in the gentle hush of dew and early light. You sit on your doorstep, hands wrapped around a cup of warm mint water, watching the town stretch and stir like something waking from a long, bitter sleep. Someone rings a bell not for warning, but to signal breakfast at the makeshift soup tent that's cropped up near the chapel. The bell is too cheerful, too sharp. It makes a baby cry, and a man laugh, and a dog howl in confusion. You smile. Today feels organized. You walk the familiar paths, past the smithy, now blackened with soot but active, past the healer's empty house, now adopted by 3 women who've started offering tea and tinctures of their own, past the square, where people are putting up signs, actual signs. One reads, "Found, a green boot. One left. Claim it or it's mine." Another, "Looking for hands to help rebuild the mill. Bread depends on it. And your favorite? If you survived, we want your name. Roll call by the well on Sunday." It's strange how fragile that looks. Just chalk on wood, ink on paper, but how strong it feels. You run into a man carrying a ladder. He offers you a job. You're not sure what the job is, and he doesn't explain, but you follow anyway. Turns out, he's fixing roofs. Any roof, doesn't matter whose. "Rain's coming next week," he says, as if nature suddenly has a schedule again. You help. You hold the ladder, pass tools, shout directions. Your arms ache, your palms blister. You haven't worked like this in months. It feels good. There's a quiet camaraderie among the workers. No boasting, no orders, just a steady rhythm of doing. Someone whistles. Someone else hums. It becomes music. You pause at one point to look across the rooftops. The town, from above, is a patchwork. Stone, wood, char, clay, holes filled, gaps repaired, shingles mismatched. But it's standing, like a worn quilt, ugly in places, sacred in others. You think, we did this. We're doing this. You eat lunch on the roof, cold beans and half an apple, and talk with a woman who once ran a dye shop. She lost her entire household. Now she climbs ladders and says she might dye fabric again if anyone starts caring about colors. "Wouldn't that be something," she says. "If people wanted blue again?" You nod. "We'll get there." Later, you write it down. The world won't come back all at once. First, roofs, then bread, then colors. Olme. You help until the sun slants low, then make your way back home. Your legs are sore, your hands throb. You couldn't be happier. That night, someone lights lanterns in the square. Not many, just 5 or 6 hung on nails and hooks, flickering like low stars. People gather around them without being told to, like moths, like survivors. One person starts singing. No one joins in, not right away. But they listen. The voice wavers. It's not trained, not strong, but it's clear. The song is about wheat, or love, or both. You can't tell, doesn't matter. Because when it ends, no one claps. They just breathe together. And that sound? That single breath? It's the loudest thing you've heard in weeks. You walk home slowly, beneath those small flickering lights. You sit beside your plant, it's still just leaves. But they seem taller now, reaching. You light your candle. You add to the book. When the fire ends, let the light stay. Then you tuck yourself under your blanket and whisper, "We're almost there. Not done. Not cured. Not safe. But almost there." And that's enough to sleep on. The next morning, you hear something that used to mean very little, but now feels monumental. A knock at the door. Not a scream, not a whisper, just a knock. 3 polite taps. You open it and see a young boy holding a rolled-up parchment. His knees are muddy, and one of his boots is untied, but he stands straight like a messenger of kings. "From the council," he says, handing you the scroll. You unroll it slowly, expecting another warning, another list of the lost, another rule. But this one is different. It reads, "We're mapping who's left, who's able, who's willing. If you are any of these things, come to the chapel before sunset." Below, a simple seal half faded, slightly smudged. It barely holds the ink, but it holds. You stare at the message, reread it, and feel something you haven't let yourself feel fully. Belonging. You're not just surviving this anymore, you're part of it. The after. The what comes next. You nod to the boy and hand him half a roll and the last of your apple. He grins wide, says nothing, and runs off. You spend the morning making notes, things you remember from the worst days. How the sickness moved, what helped, what didn't. You make lists, diagrams, even rough sketches. You write down the names of the dead. Not because anyone asked, but because someone should. By afternoon, you head to the chapel. The crowd is small but sturdy. 10, maybe 12. A priest, a builder, a widow, 2 farmers. The juggler is there, somehow juggling again, but now with potatoes. You don't ask why. The council is seated at a long table made of doors. No fancy robes this time. Just rolled up sleeves and faces that look like yours. Tired, but still there. They ask simple questions. What can you do? What do you remember? What do you know now that you didn't before? People answer carefully, slowly. One woman says, "I can sew." A man says, "I know how to trap rabbits." Another says, "I remember the names of the ones who died alone." You say, "I kept a record. I wrote it all down." They nod. The councilwoman writes your name beside the word. Archivist? You almost laugh. You've gone from sleeping in a shed behind a tavern to being called an archivist because you had a notebook, some herbs, and a sharp memory. You say, "Sure." By evening, the town's names are written on a board nailed to the chapel wall. A full roll call. Over half the town is gone. But the names listed now? They're the start. Later, a few people gather at the old inn. The sign is scorched. The door hangs loose. But someone's lit a fire in the hearth, and people sit near it, knees touching, shoulders brushing. The warmth is more than the flames. You share stories. Not just of the plague, but of before. One man says he once saw the sea. A girl describes her grandmother's spice bread, with honey and crushed almonds. The juggler admits he was never a juggler, just a baker's apprentice who got bored one day and started tossing rolls into the air. Everyone laughs. Even you. You realize something. None of these people are who they were before the plague. Not one. And that's okay. You return home by starlight. You check the plant. One green bud, tightly curled, sits at the tip of a stem. You light your candle. You write in your book. After death comes memory. And after memory, names. If you can name what you've lost, you're ready to build something new. You put the book down and whisper, "My name is still mine." And with that, you sleep. The sky today is the kind of blue that looks freshly invented, not a cloud in sight. Even the smoke that usually smudges the horizon has thinned to a lazy haze. You sit in your doorway, legs stretched, a bowl of warm nettle soup in your lap. You sip slowly. You earned this peace. Across the street, someone paints. Yes, paints. A woman stands on a stool, brush in hand, adding flowers in curling patterns around her doorframe. Not real flowers, not even good ones. Just swirls of red and yellow and green, painted with clumsy hope. You walk over. "Why flowers?" you ask. She glances down, flicking paint off her fingers. "Because weeds grow whether you want them to or not," she says. "So I thought, maybe beauty should too." You help her finish. No payment, no instructions, just brushstrokes and breathing. By midday, the wall is covered. It looks like a child's dream. Messy, colourful, impossible not to smile at. Someone passing by nods. Another pauses. By sundown, 2 more homes are being painted. One with suns, another with vines. You add it to your book. If colour returns, so does courage. Back at the chapel, the council meets again. This time, the doors are open. No guards, no warnings, just townsfolk, gathered in the pews, sharing. You sit near the back. They're discussing trade routes, whether the road east is safe, whether the river can be used again. Someone volunteers to scout. Someone else offers their horse, though it's old and prone to sneezing. The mood is serious, but not grim. You speak up. You tell them what you've written. Not the poems or thoughts, but the facts. What food lasted longest, which herbs seemed to help, how long it took for symptoms to appear. They listen. Not like it's quaint, but like it's valuable. When you finish, the councilwoman nods. "We'll copy it," she says. "Bind it. Keep it safe." Emdv. Your book, once scribbled in a panic, stained with soup and sweat, is now part of the town's official record. You feel something settle in your chest. Not pride, not relief, just meaning. Later, someone hosts a dinner. A real one. Not much food, root vegetables, broth, a single pie that gets cut into tiny, polite slices. But it's the first shared meal in months. You sit next to the juggler, who now claims he's training to be a cook. You don't ask whether he's any good. The healer's absence is felt, but not painfully. She left something behind, and it's working. People check on each other now, share tinctures, leave satchels of herbs outside doors like love letters. You walk home under moonlight. Your street smells like fresh bread. Someone's baking again. You pass the painted house. The flowers shimmer faintly in the dark, like they remember the sun. You reach your doorstep. You pose. Your plant has bloomed. A single violet flower, trembling on its stalk, impossibly delicate. You kneel beside it and laugh soft and long from the bottom of your ribs. You whisper, "You made it." You don't light the candle tonight. You don't write. You just sit beside the flower, in silence, because tonight, nothing needs to be said. You wake to music, not imagined, not faint, not the off-key hum of someone trying to remember a lullaby. Real music, a lute, maybe. Strings plucked with shaky but deliberate hands. A melody as simple as a sigh, played out over cobblestone and sunlight. You sit up slowly, unsure if you're still dreaming. But no, it's there. Drifting down the street from somewhere near the old tavern. Someone's playing for others, not just themselves. And that's the difference. You follow the sound barefoot. Around the corner, beneath a torn canopy and next to a stack of empty barrels, a man plays, middle-aged, balding, with fingers that twitch between chords. Beside him, 3 children sit cross-legged on the ground, heads tilted like flowers toward warmth. You stay back, not wanting to intrude. But when he finishes, he looks up and says, "Know any songs?" You shake your head. He shrugs. "Me neither. I make them up now." That becomes the phrase of the day. We make it up now. Because that's what everyone's doing. The markets reopen, but there are no prices, just offers. A loaf of bread for 2 baskets of kindling. A jar of honey for fixing someone's roof. One woman swaps a necklace made from buttons for half a wheel of cheese. It's chaos, and it works. There's no law for any of this. No coinage, just trust, generosity, and a fair amount of shrugging. You help an elderly man build a table. You've never built a table before. He hasn't either. The legs wobble. One is definitely shorter than the others, but when he places a plate on it and it doesn't fall, he claps like a child. You laugh. So does he. The children paint the legs with blue spirals. You add it to your book. A town doesn't come back because of policy. It comes back because someone decides to build a table, and someone else decides to sit at it. Later, by the river, people gather. Yes, the river. After weeks of avoiding it, someone suggests it's time. The town meets there in small groups. Someone reads aloud from a prayer book. Another tosses a flower into the water. No one speaks of what was done here before, but the silence is sacred. A boy wades ankle deep to skip stones. A girl laughs and copies him. Then two more join. Then you. The water is cold and clean. It feels like permission. You return home, soaked from the knees down and smiling for no reason. Your plant now has 2 flowers. The doll leans gently against the pot. You leave it there. You light your candle and open the book. You add a line. We return not as we were, but as who we became when we refused to vanish. That night, the sky is so clear you can see the milky river of stars. Someone says, I forgot there were this many. Someone else says, they were always there. We just stopped looking up. You lie on your back in the square, shoulder to shoulder with strangers who feel like something more. And you think, this isn't after the plague. This is the during that becomes the before. And tomorrow? Tomorrow is ours. You rise before the bell rings. Not from fear, not from noise, just instinct. The sky is still dark, but the kind of dark that promises light. You step outside and stretch. Your body aches from rebuilding, from lifting, from living, and it feels good. You visit the chapel. The doors are open, candles burning low. Someone's arranged wildflowers at the front. Not fancy ones, just dandelions and daisies in a clay pot. It's not about beauty, it's about intent. You kneel, not to pray, but to think, to remember. Names flow through your mind like a quiet procession. Gerard, the baker's son, the girl's mother, the healer's lost patients, the monk, the flagellants, even the rats, all of them part of this strange, messy history you now carry. Historians still debate what truly ended the Black Death in towns like yours. Was it herd immunity? A mutation in the bacterium? Better practices like the quarantines? The vinegar cloths? The sage bundles? Maybe. Maybe not. Maybe it was stubbornness. Or love. Or sheer dumb luck. Maybe it was you. You leave the chapel and head to the roll call. Today's task: rebuilding the bell tower. You're not a mason, but no one is anymore. That's the thing, you all just figure it out. One stone at a time, one rope pull at a time. You work beside a man who once made shoes, a woman who once taught letters, and a boy who once stole from your shed and now brings you soup every Tuesday. It's slow, messy, filled with splinters. But by sunset, the first level stands. Someone strikes the bell. It gives a low, noble note. The town stops, turns, listens, and someone says, there it is. Not the bell, the heartbeat. You record it in your book. We thought the bell was for warning, for mourning. But it was also a promise. If it rings again, so do we. That night, you're invited to dinner. Not a soup line, a dinner. Chairs, table, plates, conversation. The food is simple stew, thick with onions and carrots, bread with rosemary, even a thin slice of pear. You savor each bite like it's the first meal of your life. Stories pass from mouth to mouth like warm bread. Someone describes seeing a rainbow after the fires. Someone else tells of hiding in a wine barrel for 3 days straight, only to emerge drunk and alive. You tell your tale too. Not all of it, just the part about the girl with the flowers, the doll, the note on your door. They listen, and when you finish, the woman across from you wipes a tear and says, I think she saved more than just you. You walk home beneath starlight. You pause at the river. The moon reflects off its surface, unbothered by the past. You kneel, touch the water, and whisper thanks. To no one, to everyone. Back in your room, the flowers have spread. 4 now. Pale violet, leaning toward the window like they're reaching for what's next. You write, "I survived the Black Death. Not because I was stronger, but because I learned to stay, to listen, to name the days, to forgive the silence." You close the book and leave it by the candle, just in case someone comes after you, someone who needs to know how it was and how it became. And then you sleep. Morning brings visitors. Not looters, not priests, not plague doctors in bird-like masks. Real visitors. From another town. 3 of them, 2 men and a woman, arrive by foot, their cloaks dusty, their shoes worn thin. One carries a satchel that rattles. Another holds a crooked walking stick. The woman has a quill tucked behind her ear and ink stains on her hands. They're greeted cautiously but not with fear. Just the practiced suspicion of people who've seen too much. You're asked to join the council for the welcome. You walk there slowly, quietly rehearsing what might be said. The visitors sit across from you at a table inside the chapel. They explain they've come from a valley to the west. Small village, fewer people, different methods. They want to trade knowledge. And suddenly, you understand. The Black Plague took many things, lives, homes, stories, but what it couldn't take was connection. And now, for the first time, 2 recovering towns are sitting together, trying to weave a new world. They ask questions. What did you use to clean water? How did you mark homes? Did you find anything that helped? You answer in kind. Did you isolate the sick? Did music help? Did your healers survive? The woman with the quill nods at everything. I've been writing it all down, she says. Someday, someone's going to want to know how we lived through this. You point at your book. Me too. Her eyes widen. She reaches across the table and touches the cover reverently, like she's touching the spine of an ancestor. You swap stories. You compare myths. Apparently in their village, people believed hanging garlic braids from windows faced west would ward off the sickness. In yours, people swore by burning rosemary with the sunrise. There's no judgment, only fascination. It's not about right or wrong anymore. It's about what worked. Historians still puzzle over the patchwork survival rates from town to town. Some say it was geography. Others point to luck. Still others claim spiritual practices had some subconscious calming effect that helped bodies resist infection. You think maybe all of it mattered. After the meeting, you take the visitors on a quiet walk through the square. You show them the painted houses, the rebuilt mill, the soup tent, the growing field. You show them the wall where names are posted. New names, not of the dead, but of the living, the ones who stayed. You lead them to your garden. The flowers are still blooming. The girl's doll watches from its usual spot. The visitors smile. One of them whispers, "I'd forgotten purple could look like that." Before they leave, you swap books. You give the woman your second copy, a painstakingly rewritten version of your notes. She gives you a small, leather-bound ledger filled with charts, herbs, and careful script titled Lessons from the Edge. You feel like 2 worlds just shook hands. That evening, the town hosts a gathering. Not a festival, not a ceremony, just a meeting of warmth. The visitors sit by the fire. They sing a song from their region, something in a different dialect, filled with strange vowels and long pauses. The townsfolk listen, then answer with a lullaby of their own. And for one moment, 2 stories braid together in song. You don't write that part down. You just feel it. You go home under stars that feel closer than usual. You light your candle. You write, "We are not islands, we are bridges, between what was and what's next, between ruin and repair." Then, before sleeping, you look at the visitor's book one last time. You open to a page that simply says, "We survived because someone told us it was possible." You close your eyes and hope your words will do the same for someone else. You wake to the sound of hammers again, sharp, purposeful, full of rhythm. But this time, it's not rooftops or carts, it's the schoolhouse. Yes, the schoolhouse. It's been boarded up since the first bell rang out for plague. Now, 6 people stand outside it, prying the shutters off the windows, sweeping out old papers, lifting desks back onto their legs like wounded animals. You stop and watch. Someone waves you over. You don't hesitate. Inside, the air smells of dust and ink. The walls are stained with age, but the floor feels steady beneath your feet. A woman, tall, thin, with a smudge of chalk on her forehead, points to a pile of broken stools. Can you fix those? You nod. And just like that, you're a carpenter again. By midday, children arrive. Not many, but enough. Some clutch slates. One brings a handful of berries to trade for a lesson. Another shows up just to listen. No one is turned away. The teacher gathers them near the door and tells a story not from a book, but from memory. It's about a fox that outsmarts a plague spirit by pretending to be a tree. The kids are transfixed. You add it to your book that evening. Rebuilding begins with memory, but it grows with imagination. Later, you sit beside the fire pit near the chapel. Someone roasts root vegetables. Someone else tells a riddle. There's no agenda, just belonging. The girl with the flowers arrives again, this time with her hair braided and a string of beads around her wrist. She sits beside you and says nothing. Then she holds something out. It's a folded piece of paper. You unfold it slowly. It's a drawing. Crude, but clear. A small house with 3 flowers in front. A figure standing at the door with a long nose and big hands. A girl with a flower crown. A sun in the corner. You swallow hard. That's us? You ask. She nods. You whisper, "Thank you." She shrugs. You stayed. She runs off before you can answer. You hold the picture against your chest for a long time. Later, by lantern light, you copy the drawing into your book as best you can. Beneath it, you write, "Sometimes surviving is just being seen." And then, "Sometimes healing is letting yourself be drawn." The next morning, people gather in front of the schoolhouse again. This time, not to build, but to learn. The teacher writes the alphabet on a large board. She reads aloud from the visitor's ledger. A list of herbs, simple instructions. Then a paragraph titled, "Things We Know Work." It becomes a lesson in science, yes, but also in story. And at the end, she looks out at the children and says, "We write these things down so we don't forget. So when this happens again, and it will, one day you'll know what to do." And just like that, the lesson ends. The kids applaud. And you? You sit there thinking, this is it. This is how we break the cycle. Not with swords, not with cures, but with pencils and stories and second chances. You walk home slower that evening. Your plant now has 5 flowers. The doll rests in the window. The pages of your book are almost full. And the town? The town is awake again. Not just alive, not just surviving. Awake? You wake to bells. Not a warning, not morning bells. The schoolhouse has one now. Someone found it in the rubble behind the chapel, polished it until it gleamed, and hung it on a beam out front. Every day at sunrise, a child rings it. Not too loud, not too soft. Just enough to say, "We are still here." You rise, stretch, and make your way to the garden. The flowers have multiplied. 7 now. The stems tall and proud, the petals curling like little sails in the wind. The plant has become a kind of quiet celebrity. People stop by and stare like it's a monument. Maybe it is. You smile and water it gently, whispering, "Keep going." You spend the morning helping patch the road out of town. The main path to the river had been left to rot, rutted, muddy, scattered with ash and hoof prints from the early days of chaos. Now it's being made walkable. Not perfect, but safe. There's something poetic about that. You carry stones, you smooth dirt. A boy hums while you work. Another whistles off key. It becomes a rhythm. You fall into it. Around noon, a rider arrives from the east. He's clean, cautious, and wide-eyed. Says he's from a town 3 days away, and they've heard rumors that this place survived. He says it like a myth, like he expected to find bones and smoke. Instead, he finds painted houses, a ringing bell, a healer's tent, a schoolhouse, a man planting onions. You take him to the council. He tells them his town wants to send trade, maybe even people, skilled hands, young families, new life. The council listens. The blacksmith nods. The councilwoman turns to you and says, "Will you write this down?" You do. That night, the town lights lanterns again, not in mourning but to guide. If travelers come, they'll see it glowing. A new kind of beacon. You sit near the square, book open on your lap, candle beside you. You write, "They called us a ruin, But what they saw was the ember. They came looking for survivors. They found a beginning. Later, a child gives you a letter written in shaky script. It reads, "Thank you for not leaving. I'm learning to read. I'm learning to remember." No signature, just a drawing of a heart. You add it to your book, folding it carefully between pages. Across the square, music rises again, this time not one player, but many. A pot clanged like a drum, a whistle made from reed, and someone strumming something that might once have been a harp. It's terrible. It's perfect. You sit in the glow of it, surrounded by mismatched chairs, crooked roofs, half-rebuilt doors, and people who have learned how to live again. You whisper to yourself, just once, "We did it." Then, as if on cue, the bell rings again. Not a warning, just a note, a presence, a song. You close your eyes, and the wind smells like rosemary and baking bread. You wake not to sound, but to light. Sunlight pours through the gaps in your roof like it's in a hurry, painting golden strips across the floor, the wall, the edges of your notebook. You blink and stretch and feel something that once felt impossible. Rest. Today marks 6 weeks since the worst passed. The grave carts are long gone. The river runs clear again. The red X's have faded from the doors. Some washed off, some painted over, some never returned. You dress slowly, savouring the feel of clean cloth on skin. You pull on your boots, not because you're fleeing, but because you're building. There's a difference. Outside, people are busy, joyfully so. 2 women whitewash a wall. A boy herds goats, actual goats, who bleat like they own the place. The juggler turned baker opens a stand with 3 loaves and a sign that reads, "Soft, slightly edible, no refunds." Everyone laughs. You though too. You help carry timber to the new granary. The old one burned. No one talks about it anymore. They just rebuild. You work beside a man who lost his family and never once spoke until today. He taps your shoulder, points at the way you hold your end of the beam and says, "You'll throw out your back." You blink. You talk? He shrugs. Only when there's something worth saying. You both laugh and keep working. Later, the healer's apprentices 3 now set up a table in the square with their remedies. You pass by and see neat rows of jars and bundles, each labelled mint for headaches, leander for sleep, wine, for everything. You ask if they'll teach others. They already are. At dusk, the chapel bell rings once, slow and steady. The whole town gathers. Someone lights a fire. Someone else brings music. And then the councilwoman stands. She clears her throat, nervous. "We've decided it's time," she says, "to rename the town square." You glance around. People murmur. "It's no longer just a market," she continues. "It's where we came back. It's where we chose to begin again." She gestures to a new sign, still covered with cloth. Someone pulls it down. Carved in wood, hand-painted, barely straight, it reads, "The Heart." The crowd is silent. Then someone claps. Then another. Soon it's everyone. Because it fits. This cracked, burned, rebuilt place is the heart. It kept beating. And now, it leads. That night, you walk home under a sky so clear it feels unreal. You pass by the wall of names. New ones have been added, not just the dead, but the born. A baby delivered last week. A child found in the woods who wandered in yesterday. A goat named Mabel. All are written in careful script. You add a line in your book. A town lives as long as its names are remembered. At your door, you pause. Your plant now blooms with 9 flowers, 1 for each week since the sickness arrived. They tremble slightly in the breeze, as if whispering back at the world. You place the little heart drawing from the child inside the journal. Beneath it, you write, "We were not spared. We were shaped." You lie back on your cot, eyes wide open, watching moonlight shift across the ceiling. And when sleep takes you, it's soft, full, forgiving. You rise with the sun, not groggy, not startled, just ready, like your body now knows when the world begins again. You light your candle one final time. The wax has grown stubby, soft at the base. You watch it flicker, then extinguish it before it burns too low. It feels symbolic. Outside, the town hums with quiet joy. No fanfare, just motion. You walk the square, passing familiar faces. The juggler-turned-baker hands you a roll and a wink. A child tugs your sleeve and asks if stories count as medicine. You say, only the best ones. By the chapel, the healer's apprentices are packing satchels. They're leaving, spreading outward. They'll take what they've learned, the herbs, the rhythms, the kindness, and walk it into other towns still buried in shadow. One turns to you and says, "You wrote it down. That's what matters." You give them your second copy of the book. They promise to copy it again. And again, a chain of memory, linking hands across the map. Later, you climb the hill outside town for the first time in months. From up here, you can see everything. The river, winding like thread. The chapel, slightly crooked. The rooftops patched like patchwork quilts. The new field, sprouting green. The bell, shining like a sun. And the people scattered, laughing, moving with purpose. You sit on a stone and eat your roll. It tastes like rosemary. And hope. You open your notebook nearly full and write one of the last entries. Healing is not a return. It's a rerouting. We do not come back to who we were. We step forward into who we became. You rest beside the flowers when you return. 11 now. Vibrant. Insistent. You leave them water and a whispered thanks. A young boy walks by, holding a scrap of paper. He looks up and says, "Are you the man who stayed?" You nod, unsure how to answer. He grins. "Good. I'm staying too." "Oh." And he runs off. You laugh. That night, someone reads aloud in the square. Not from scripture. Not from rules. From your book. Your words. Read like gospel. Like story. Like truth. The candle beside the speaker dances in the wind. You sit in the crowd, hood pulled low, anonymous in the best way. You don't need to be known. You just needed to matter. As the reading ends, the speaker says, "And tomorrow we plant trees." Everyone claps. You walk home under starlight. You do not light the candle. You open the book. There is only one page left. You write, "When the bell rings again, may it be for birth, not death. For dancing, not warning. For song." Then you place the quill down and blow gently across the page. The ink dries. The story rests. And so do you. The final morning comes not with fanfare, but with quiet. The kind of quiet that's not empty but full. Like the hush of a theatre before the lights rise. Or the stillness of a seed before it breaks open and becomes more. You sit outside your door, notebook closed in your lap, fingers curled around a warm mug of something herbal and sweet. Your plant now blooms with 12 flowers. You whisper, "You made it." And for the first time, you realize you're not just talking to the plant. Down in the square, people are gathering again. But not for repair or caution or counting heads. Today's gathering is for something different. Something new. It's a festival, the first since it all began. No one's calling it that out loud. Not yet. But you see it in the movement. The colors. The way people dress with just a little more flair. Scarves with stitching. Aprons dusted with flour instead of ash. A girl with painted cheeks. At the center of it all stands a tree newly planted, its roots barely settled in the earth. Around it, tables of food, songs with no beginning or end, games played with stones and sticks. You walk slowly into the square. No one stops you. No one calls you out. But you feel the nods, the looks, the quiet thank yous that live in the space between words. The councilwoman waves you over. She gestures to a bench beneath the tree. "Will you read it?" she asks. You hesitate. Then you nod. You sit, open your notebook to the first page, and begin. "Hey guys, tonight we travel back to a world where surviving the week meant avoiding fleas, fevers, and folks who thought onions could cure anything." The people laugh softly at that. You keep reading slowly, steadily. You don't get far. You don't need to. Because after a few lines, someone else takes over. A woman recites from memory. Then a boy. Then a man with a voice like gravel and firewood. They've all read your words. Or heard them. Or felt them. They know this story. Because it's theirs too. You close the book and let it rest on your lap. The pages ripple in the breeze. Someone brings out a song. Not one of mourning. One of rhythm. Hands clapping. Feet stomping. A melody that grows like spring. People dance. The girl with the flower crown twirls again, same as she always did. But now she holds someone's hand. They twirl together. The healer is gone. But her methods live on. The baker drops a tray and laughs so hard he snorts flour. A new mother hums to a baby wrapped in patchwork cloth. You just sit and watch. And finally, when the sun dips low and the fire in the center glows warm and golden, you write your last line. We lived, and we remembered. And that, in the end, was survival. You close the book. You leave it on the bench. Not because it's done, but because you are. You walk home in the glow of lanterns and laughter and music that doesn't need words. You lie down one last time beside the 12-flower plant, the doll, the candle, and the silence you no longer fear. And you sleep. The story fades now. The voices settle. The fire dims. You lie back on your pillow, the weight of the blanket soft against your chest, your breath slowing with each passing moment. The plague has passed. The bells have rung. The square has been named. And stillness has returned not as dread, but as peace. You are no longer alone. You're part of something rebuilt. The sounds of the village fall away bit by bit, until all that remains is the breeze outside your window and the warm memory of blooming flowers. Let that wind rustle the leaves in your mind. Let the smell of rosemary, the echo of soft laughter, the brush of candlelight linger with you. There is nothing left to fix, nothing left to prove, only rest. You did what you had to do. You stayed. You listened. You remembered. And now, you can let go of the weight, let go of the past, let go of the lists, let go of the fear of forgetting. It's all written down. And now, you can close your eyes and sleep, softly, gently, without worry, because even when you dream, the bells still ring, and the flowers still bloom, and the world, somehow, still turns.